Morning, everyone. We'll call the November 2nd, 2010 meeting of the Jackson City Council to order. We'll ask Councilman Harvey Buchanan to lead us in our invocation and pledge. If you would, please rise.
Let us pray. This morning, God, our Heavenly Father, as we petition thy throne of grace, we first of all give thanks for the many blessings that you have so richly bestowed upon us. We pray, Father, that you forgive us of our sins that we have transgressed against thee, and lead us from one good grace unto another. We pray, Father, that you grant us wisdom, courage, knowledge, and conviction, and on how to suit and serve thee and thee alone. Pray, Father, that you would anoint this council meeting and elevate our minds, and may we deliberate for the benefit of the entire city of Jackson, Tennessee. That's right. These things we ask in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, Anita, I think you can show all council members present. Item 4 is approval of the revised minutes, the September 7th, 2010 meeting, and you can see that that correction that was made. Or if there's no objection, we'll approve those minutes as corrected. Those will be the ones of September 7th. You have copies of the approval of the minutes of the October 5th, 2010 meeting. And if there are no objections, we'll go ahead and approve those minutes as you receive them. We have one introduction this morning, that of Erin Brooks. Erin, you in the audience? Last time I saw you eating a donut. She is the daughter of Councilman Ernest Brooks, and she is a judge at Parkview Montessori School, correct? Alexander School. Good to have you here. We have also some members of Leadership Jackson here. If you all stand and be recognized. Thank you all for being here this morning. Thank you all. We have two proclamations, which I'll dismiss myself and go read. Proclamation this morning is for National Adoption Month, and we have Mencia Springfield here, I hope, with the Department of Children's Services. Mencia, if you'd come up and just stand beside me, I'll read this proclamation, make it a part of these meetings, and then present it to you. Proclamation. Whereas adoption is one of the ways in which families come together and provide for each other, and whereas adoption provides stability and roots for children who find themselves without these valuable tools, and whereas adoption makes the richness of parenthood available to those who might otherwise not be able to enjoy this privilege, and whereas every child deserves a family, and all efforts will be made for permanency of children in foster care in a timely manner. And whereas our community and our world are immeasurably improved by the presence of families who love and support each other. Whereas the Department of Children's Services has labored to present adoption as an option that will accommodate families desiring children and for children needing the security of a permanent home. Now therefore we, Jerry Guest, Mayor of the City of Jackson, Tennessee, and Jimmy Harris, Mayor of Madison County, Tennessee, do hereby proclaim November 2010 as National Adoption Month in Jackson, Madison County, and urge all citizens to join us in this worthy observance. So we thank you for what you do. It's my honor to present this proclamation to you. Mention, if you'd like to make a statement, please feel free.
We would like to thank Mayor Gist and the city council and the board members on behalf of observing November as National Adoption Awareness Month. On behalf of the department, you know, there are a lot of children that are available for adoption that a lot of the community doesn't know about. And what we're trying to do is just make the community aware that we do have children that are in need of permanent homes and that we're willing to reach out to the community, and hopefully you all can support us and help us to find a family for these children. Thank you so much.
Second proclamation is National Home Care Month, and we have Trent Presley, Agency Administrator for Intrepid, and Christy Johnson, County Executive for Intrepid. So if y'all come on up, join me. Thank you all for being here. This is a proclamation whereas Amethyst Home Health Services provides high quality and compassionate health care services to those in need, especially at times of a community or personal health care crisis. And whereas home health care is the most preferred method of health care delivery among disabled, elderly, and chronically ill individuals eager to live independently in their own home as long as they possibly can. And whereas home health care services allows families to stay together and provide for greater health, dignity, and comfort in our communities. And whereas home health care in the United States is a growing alternative to hospitalization or other institution-based forms of health care for acute and chronic illnesses, providing care to millions of Americans each year. And whereas thousands of everyday heroes, such as home care nurses, therapists, and aides work tirelessly to provide professional help and palliative care and support to millions of Americans in need of quality health services. And whereas these dedicated home care professionals and volunteers form a support network that continues to play a vital role in health care delivery for our nation's disabled, infirm, and aging population. And whereas the National Association for Home Health Care and Hospice, Amethyst Home Care Services, and thousands of home care agencies across the United States have declared the month of November 2010 as National Home Care Month, and are calling on all Americans to observe these occasions with appropriate ceremonies and activities. Now therefore, I, Jerry Gist, Mayor of the City of Jackson, Tennessee, do hereby proclaim the month of November as National Home Care Month and encourage the support and participation of all citizens in learning more about the home care and hospice concepts of care for the elderly, disabled, and infirm. So guys, it's an honor for me to present this to you on behalf of the citizens of Jackson,
While Christy and I may be here representing Intrepid Home Health Services, it's really just to make everyone more aware of what home health really is about. Lord willing, each of us will live to a point in our lives where we will be in our homes but still needing some assistance, and there are multiple home health agencies locally and in the region, and they provide quality care, and more importantly, it gives people opportunity to be at home, to have dignity, to be among familiar settings. I have a grandmother right now that takes advantage of these services, and that is what a month like National Home Health Month is all about, is just to raise awareness and let people know that the services are available both locally, regionally, nationally, wherever you or your loved ones may be. So I want to thank the City Council and thank Mayor Gist for giving us the opportunity to come in here today and promote this month. Thank you.
Okay, item 7, this is time for invitation for public comment on any item under new business. this morning. If you'd like to make a statement under any item, if you would, just indicate now by holding your hand up, and I'll be happy to call on you once we get to that item of business. Okay, seeing none, we'll continue. Item 8 is first readings, consideration of an ordinance to rezone property located on the south side of West Orleans Street between White Street and Union Avenue from RG1 General Residential, RG1-1/C General Residential Conservation, and IO Wholesale and Warehousing District to a B4 General Business District and containing 12.8 acres, more or less, submitted by the CRA. Dan?
Good morning, Mayor and Council.
Morning.
This is a continuation of the plan that has been before you and you've adopted. This is the zoning that puts in place the zoning class that we need to accommodate the development plans that are being proposed for the Central Creek redevelopment area. And so this is the first part, which basically reflects the bulk of the property. The property right now, and I would show you a map, but because of the setup, I can't get your map up there. But I would show you a map that shows a piece of property that is split into several zoning classes. You've got IO, which is wholesale warehousing to the south. You've got B4 on the frontage along Highland, and then you've got RG1 on the balance of the property up to West Orleans. So this reflects a zoning change to B4 to consolidate the zoning under one class. This will allow the commercial plans that they propose, and also the residential is allowed in this zone. And it's been to the Planning Commission, and they are recommending approval of this to you.
Question.
Let's get a motion first.
So moved.
Okay, we have a motion. Okay, question? Councilman?
In regards to the properties along the Union Avenue division of this, the RG1C,
Yes, sir.
that was rezoned in 1992, is that correct? 93, something like that?
Sounds right.
Sounds about right. There is a reason why that particular C is on there. Would you explain to the council what that's for?
Yes, sir. And at the time, this was part of a neighborhood effort to downzone this area, which we refer to as the Atlanta area. At the time, this area was zoned RG2, which will allow multifamily development. We had a lot of intrusion of multifamily into single-family neighborhoods that were predominantly single-family, and to kind of stem this tide, the community came and petitioned us to seek downzoning. They also wanted us to put in place some way to review new construction, demolition, to kind of preserve the historic character of the neighborhood. So at that time, the only tool that was available was the conservation, which is a historic class. It's not pure historic like East Main, but it is an overlay that does allow review of new construction, major additions and demolitions. Now we are proposing to lift that off a section of this property, and the reason for that is when we established the redevelopment area, we established a design review process for that area. It's a design review process that's really a little bit more stringent than the conservation district, so any new construction will be reviewed through that design review process. The only difference will be that the Planning Commission will review the development plan, whereas in the historic class, the Historic Zoning Commission does. We asked this because this project, the majority of this property is outside the conservation, and because the development plan will be delivered as one package, we felt it better to keep the package intact and have one body reviewing that. So we feel like we're not affecting the integrity of that neighborhood, in that there will be a review of the architectural elevations of the houses. There will be a review that will look at the historic character and look at compatibility. So that review will be taken care of. So that's the reason why we're asking for that to be lifted at this time.
Next question has to do with the particular project that we're talking about before us. How much of a footprint does that particular project have on the shaded area here? Can you tell me?
This particular one, of course, is in two pieces. You know, you've got the zoning class for this one, and then you've got the zoning class for the second item. It's basically the properties that are along Union Street on the east side that back up to the property that used to be the old street department property, and those properties that fronted on Farrar Street. The next zoning class takes in the two sides of Wells Street, which again are properties that we have acquired for the most part. There are a few that we haven't acquired, but mostly the Wells Street area and the Union Street area, of course, we acquired all those properties on both sides. So again, these were acquired as a part of redevelopment and residential, single-family residential redevelopment and rehabilitation. So this just carries forward that idea. So as a footprint, it represents, you know, the majority of the residential component of this development.
So I guess my question, when I say on the footprint of this particular project, the project that's been brought before, I mean, it's been in the media, not necessarily brought before the council in regards to a vote, or even before the commission in regards to a vote, but, or the.
It was in the plan. I
Yeah.
mean,
And there's no objection to this particular plan so far that I know of, but what I'm trying to find out is how much territory do you actually need to have that particular plan take effect?
I guess I'm having trouble understanding the
Yeah,
question.
well, in other words,
I mean,
if I were
this part of the property is reflected in the development plan for this property. The only properties that we're asking to lift that overlay on at this time
There's a little
are-
section there.
are
Yeah.
properties that are directly tied to the development that we're proposing for Central Creek. So,
Well, I don't, we've had some discussions about this, because this is, the Atlanta area has been talking to me extensively about this particular project, and they have a great concern in regards to lifting this particular, because hundreds of people went out and signed, got those petitions signed, and they included 90% of the landowners in that particular area. And it leads directly into a historical property area, which is RG1H right over there. So we're concerned about that particular area. But if this particular project, it's required for this particular project, the first phase of this particular project, then I don't think we've had any objection to it.
yeah.
We're going to be moving down to the next section, which is item 2 on this agenda. And that's going to be an area that there is some contention over, because we are not sure what you're going to do with it.
Well, again, both these sections are part of the first phase of this development. The properties along Wells Street are part of the neighborhood stabilization program that we're proposing.
But that's an RG1, right?
It
You're
is an
asking to
RG.
remove the conservative overlay.
That's right. The zoning is staying the same. Again, the plans are to build single-family residential homes there. The property that is a part of this one that we're considering now, again, is a part of the property that's going to be devoted to some multifamily. But again, we would not propose taking the conservation overlay off if we didn't feel like we had a process and a tool that would still protect the integrity of the neighborhood, look at compatibility, look at the historic character. We're not looking at wholesaling, taking away the conservation on all of Atlanta. Again, if we didn't have an alternative, a tool that we feel like's better, we would not propose it. This is a review process that will go through the Planning Commission. Will still be reviewed by staff, will still take in historic character, will still look at historical elements. None of that goes away. It's just the body at which the proposal is sent to. And we felt that having one small portion of the project go to one body and then having the rest of it go to another was kind of disjointed. We felt like it would be better to have it all reviewed by the Planning Commission for continuity.
Well, like I say, we understand the zoning from IO to IO. That one we understand, and I think that the body that has been talking to me, the board of directors of the Atlanta group as they are now, have no objection to that. They do have an objection to the next item that we're going to be talking about. So I suspect this is my only question. We'll just go on with the vote, if you'd like to.
I have a question, if I may, Mayor. And this is along the lines of Councilman Newdecker's question, Stan. Will these rezoning changes that we're about to consider, would they in any way usurp Lana's or any other entity's ability to protest or to have what we're doing reviewed?
No, because again, the zoning classes that are being proposed for the bulk of the property are uses that would be allowed
Compatible
anyway
and allowed
under the
anyway.
current zoning.
Right.
I mean, IO allows B4 uses.
Absolutely.
So, RG1, it allows duplex, but they are proposing some multifamily, so that change does accommodate that. But the other zoning that will come on the next item, we're not changing the underlying zoning. The RG1 will still be there. The conservation is being lifted, not to take away review. It's just to put the review in the planning commission's hands, because all this is in the redevelopment area. So there will still be that review. They can still come to that review. They can still voice their opinions about that review. We'll still review the architectural elevations of those houses that are proposed. We haven't done that yet because with the wellness center and some of the negotiations that are going on with the hospital, the final master plan has not been completed yet. But as soon as it is, it will go to the planning commission. It will be reviewed by them and be approved. So, I mean, that process is not changing in any way.
Right.
Again, our motivation was to have that review come to one body for continuity so that they could review the entire project and not have one commission reviewing one component of it and then the rest of it going to another.
Right, makes sense to me. Thank you very much, Dan.
Okay, this is first reading on this ordinance, so I'll call for a public hearing. Is there anyone present who would like to speak in support or in opposition to the passage of this ordinance? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing. We have a motion to second. Council, please vote.
And the vote is unanimous.
Item 2, under first reading, consideration of ordinance to rezone property located on the west side of Union Avenue between Morgan Street and Ferris Street from RG-1C, General Residential / Conservation District, to RG1, General Residential District, and containing 4.3 acres more or less submitted by the Jackson Community Redevelopment Agency.
Question when you want a motion.
Let's get it on the floor. Let's get a motion.
So moved.
Second. Motion made and second. Go ahead, Councilman.
This is, of course, the area of contention that I'm talking about, the RG1C. And let me explain to you and the council at this particular point in time, the reason that lots of people, and Stan is artfully, or has put together a pretty good history of what happened. The Atlanta group petitioned the city council, and the council agreed that this was a good means of use of this property, is to use a conservative overlay. The concern that Atlanta has is the continual creep of such a zoning. Once we move away from RG1C and move to RG1, then we can move other properties which are attached to that particular piece of property and remove the conservative overlays. I don't completely understand the review committee's position on this, and I'm not sure what the historical body's position has been on this in several years, because they've not had to meet on any particular issue such as zoning for a long time on this area. But I'm going to recommend to the council to vote no on this at this particular time until we've had some opportunity to sit down with the Planning Commission, sit down with the CRA, and sit down with the Historical Planning Commission, so that we have an understanding what their responsibilities would be.
Okay, any other questions from council or comments? Go ahead, Councilman.
Question of Stan, what's the ramifications of us postponing voting on this? Does it need to be done now, or?
Well, I mean, the construction plans, we're moving toward, trying to construct in the spring, putting all the plans together. Holding this up will postpone our ability to get the plan in place and be able to, pursue the timetables that we're trying to put together. It's up to the council. You can postpone it. Again, I'm trying to understand some of the opposition, because all we're doing is changing the review process to which commission reviews it. We're not affecting the zoning. All the housing elevations, all the development plans will be reviewed by the Planning Commission. There will be opportunity for comment. This is just carrying forward the plan that's already been presented at several public meetings, has already been approved by this council. I guess I'm at a loss to understand why all of a sudden now there's opposition, because you know, we're carrying forward what we said all along in all of our public meetings the process would be, and we're just continuing that at this point.
The review you're talking about is the planning commission or the planning staff?
The Planning Commission.
Okay, so some of the members on the planning commission are also on the historic zoning commission, so some of the same people would be approving it.
Again, the review will be
disparate.
the same, the historic elements, the character, the review of the elevations, the development plans, all that will come to the Planning Commission, just like all the design reviews that y'all review come to you. So you'll see all that. It's not that planning staff will now go back behind the doors and come up with something and then it'll just show up out there. I mean, the process is the same process we've explained from the very beginning, and we're just carrying that out now. So I'm having a little bit of difficulty understanding why.
So you're just
now.
looking to have the same body approved for the whole area
That's
instead of
right.
one body for part of the area, another body
Because
for
the
another part of
development plan is a contiguous and integral plan, so.
Well, I'm guessing that, and I'm sorry, Randy.
No, I'm finished, thank you.
Okay. I'm guessing that there's going to be some questions of whether or not there's some efficiency to this particular plan, and I'm not really sure that it makes a lot of difference whether it goes to the Historical Planning Commission or it goes to the Planning Commission on this particular plot of property. And that the plans that we're talking about are certainly not in motion yet, because they haven't been brought before the CRA exactly. I mean, they've been,
Well,
people
the-
we're trying to get the property zoned.
Yeah, if you
First,
look at
is
the
that-
plan, you'll see the Central Creek redevelopment area is reflected in that plan, and it also shows the conceptual footprint of buildings. The plan, it states what the plan is to deliver single-family houses. All that has been presented throughout all the public meetings that we've had, and that process has always been laid out to where it would go in each step. Again, this is not the last time the community will have a chance to voice. It'll go to the Planning Commission for review. They'll get a chance to voice that then, just as if they were to go to historic zoning. We just feel like when the plan comes forward and they deliver the master plan, to us, it seems more efficient to deliver the entire master plan and let one body review all the components of that than to review a part of it and then have one commission only reviewing another part.
But again, the difference between the first step that we've just approved and this particular step is this is RG1 property. The other was a full development that we have plans for.
Well, this is tied into that too. I mean,
Are you
it's
planning,
the
so you're
same
planning to
phase.
downzone this one as well, or to move from RG1 to IO?
No,
Okay. So-
we're leaving the base zoning alone.
I-
All we're doing is taking the conservation overlay off so that this part of the project can go with the rest of it.
Well, as Councilman Wallace said, some of the same individuals that are on the planning commission are also on the historical planning commission. So, I mean, the review of one versus the review of other shouldn't make any difference.
Well, you
one
won't-
body looking
you
at it
won't
as
get the
another.
body. You won't get the full body of dialogue on the entire project. You'll have one body dealing with part of the project and
Right.
have another body dealing with another, and you won't get the entire discussion. And we just feel like it's better again. If the council doesn't want to do that, I mean, we have no problem, trying to operate in the other. We just feel like it doesn't produce concise discussion and efficient discussion.
Well, let me make a recommendation that we table this, and that by tabling it, we'll only give it a month, and we sit down with the board of directors of LANA and the CRA, and we work that out. If that's a recommendation.
We have a motion and a second
Okay.
already on the floor.
Okay.
I'll open this is first reading on this ordinance,
first
so I'll
reading.
open a public hearing to hear from anyone who would like to speak in support of or in opposition to the passage of this ordinance. Hearing none, we'll close the public hearing. Again, we have a motion and a second. Council, please vote.
Vote passes 8-1.
Item 3, under first reading, is consideration of the ordinance to close and abandon a portion of Fair Street located between White Street and Union Avenue. So moved.
Second.
Motion second. Discussion. This is also a first reading, Sam?
Yes.
Okay, I'll open a public hearing to see if there's anyone present who'd like to speak in support or opposition to passage of this ordinance. Hearing none, seeing none, we'll close the public hearing, and council, please vote.
And the vote is unanimous.
Thank you, Mayor and Council.
Thank you, Stan. Item 9 on second readings, consideration of the ordinance establishing the redevelopment trust fund for District 2 pursuant to Section 21 of the Community Redevelopment Act of 1998 and this passed on first reading. Is there a
Move the
motion?
adoption.
Second.
Second, discussion. Council, please vote.
The vote is unanimous.
Under new business, if council has no objection, we have some folks here from our Southwest HRA who would like to make a presentation to council. So if there's no objection, let's drop down to item 4 and move it up to 1. And now I'll ask Mike Smith, the Director of Southwest Human Resources, to come up and have a seat and discuss what we're doing here.
Good morning,
Morning,
Mayor
Mike.
and City Council members. Thank you for your service to this community. Southwest Human Resource Agency is a public nonprofit organization that serves in 8 counties in southwest Tennessee. We are actually an extension of local government. We're here today to ask you to consider a request to allow our agency to own a piece of property that's known as the Lewis Center. The Lewis Center is a what used to be a fire station. It's over on Grand Avenue. I think we have some pictures. Okay. The city has allowed Southwest Human Resource Agency to occupy this building for a number of years. And in that building, we occupy a nutrition site for the elderly. We serve about 36,000 meals a year out of that center, and it has worked well for us. It's a good sound building that needs some repair. Back in the May floods, there was some flooding that happened to the basement of that building where the boiler heat system has been, and it did damage to that heat system, and the city came in and did some renovation, removed some mold, but has not repaired the boiler because of the cost involved. We've been contacted by Mayor Gist's office to consider owning that building, and so that we could take care of some of the repairs. In the process of doing all this, we have already gone in and made some repairs to the roof and some repairs to the heat system. We've installed a new heat system, both of those totaling about $4,600 that we have expended because the winter months are upon us and we needed some heat for the people that come in and out of that building. There's some additional repairs that need to be made to the exterior, as you can see, and to the interior of the building. We put together a long-range plan to hopefully address those repairs over a period of time as our funds become available. We want to continue to operate in that building, and we want to be a good citizen to the city. And so the consideration to you is to allow our agency to take over ownership of that building, and maybe some stipulations as to future ownership if, in fact, at some point in time that we no longer operate out of that facility, that the property could revert back to the city's ownership. And I don't understand all the legalities to how that would happen, but we're certainly open to discussion on that and would like to occupy that building in the future. It's worked well for us. It's in a residential area. There's adequate parking. There's a lot of volunteers that serve there, and they provide a great service to the elderly population of Jackson.
Council's basic knowledge on this, I think we've operated that center or let Southwest HRA use it just on an informal basis for a number of years, and obviously the repairs are going to be necessary over the next couple of years, one step at a time, and I know it's difficult for Southwest to do that without some ownership of the property through their funding mechanism. And you'll notice in the quitclaim deed there is a reversionary clause, is that there's no time frame as far as the use of or the ownership of the building. Once it ceases to be used for the purpose that's outlined, the property would revert back to the city.
Question on that particular part of it. Usually, if people make an honest investment in a piece of property, and of course, this is around the corner from my house. My own father-in-law delivered about 500 meals out of that building several years ago. But usually when someone makes kind of an investment like that in a particular property, that we can't make or we are unable to make ourselves, then I don't see why we would ever take that investment away from them. I'd just grant it to them forever for their use.
Well, I think we're doing that, and I disagree with that in the fact that if they cease to use it, it needs to come back under control of the city.
Right.
That the city would have, say, whatever went in there, if they, as long as they're there, it's theirs. But if they give up the use of that, I think it needs to come back under the city's control as to who else would go in there and use it, especially in that residential area and where it's at. I think it's perfect like it is with the reversion clause.
Okay, I just,
Well, that,
go ahead.
that brings me to my question, is that the clause in there that says reverse back to the city doesn't say they have to continue to use it. It says as long as it's not a religious organization or a literary or charitable or scientific, and I'm wondering if that doesn't need to state that. I guess the way I'm looking at it, council, is that if we turn it over to them and they turn back around and want to sell it to a church tomorrow, they could do that. And the church could use it because that would be a religious organization.
I think you're right.
And I'm wondering if we don't need to, the quitclaim deed doesn't need to say that if they cease to use it for their purpose, then it reverts back to the city, and then we can make the determination of who it goes to after that as opposed to them.
Yeah, I would agree with it.
Okay.
Yeah, I think the use by Southwest could vary. For example, right now it's the Meals on Wheels nutrition program. It could vary into a senior center if that be the case in 10 or 15 years. But again, I tend to agree is that if the property is given up and given over to another organization for a specific purpose, then council.
I didn't draft the deed, but it says two things that trigger the reversion.
Mhm.
First, if the parcel of land ever ceases to be used by the grantee. So if they, Southwest Human Resource Services, has to use it. Second, if they cease to use it for these purposes, then it triggers reversion. So it has to be used by them, and they have to use it for one of these.
Okay,
Okay.
okay. So it does say that, I'm just reading it wrong. That's why I'm not an attorney. Thank you.
It could be
So
a blessing.
they've got to use it, and they've also got to use it for their purpose or the purpose that fits in this area here. Okay, okay.
Okay, any other questions from council? Move to approve. We have a motion to approve, and a second. Discussion. Council, please vote.
The vote is unanimous.
Thank you, Mayor
Thank you,
and
Mayor.
Board,
Thank you.
and again, this is contingent upon ratification of our Policy Council and Governing Board. We meet in December, so, but we do appreciate your support.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we'll go back up under new business to listed item number 1 is consideration of a contract for Heron Grove Road Bridge repair or replacement. Ms. White?
Bids were received on September 27th for the construction of a new bridge on Heron Grove Road. We opened those bids, we had 3 of them, and Ford Construction Company was the low bidder. And then we were asked to put that project on hold and seek an alternative way, maybe to repair it. So under the guidance of and the specifications from TDOT, we did that. We opened, yesterday was the bid opening date, we didn't receive any bids. So, third thing, we started to negotiate with another company to see if they might be interested in constructing or repairing the bridge. That didn't work either. So, after going through all the different scenarios, and we went through every one we could think of, it's our recommendation, along with the engineering department, to award this to Ford Construction Company for $413,000. And we have to remember that FEMA is paying us $37,000 for this, so our portion will be approximately $376,000. And if you approve this, they will mobilize next week, and it will take them 4 months to complete this job.
Mayor, I want to make the motion to rebuild this bridge, but I want to say 2 things. Number 1 is I want to express appreciation of the patience of people in South Jackson. They've been very patient about this. But second thing is, I think they understand that staff has worked very hard about this. It's been a confusing thing from FEMA of what we've had to do. They've not dragged their feet. They've been working hard on it, trying to come to a solution. And this is a solution that we have to live with and do. But I appreciate what everybody's done on both sides to get it to this point. And I'm glad to see us now have a recommendation. I hope the council will approve to move on and get this repaired. I make a motion we accept the contract.
Thank you.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. I may indicate this, that the $37,000 allocated by FEMA for repair, obviously that was impossible locally. We received no bids on repair, which none of the contractors seem to want to live with the liability of just repair. So that $37,000 will be appealed to FEMA. Hopefully they'll award the city either the 90% of the cost of the new bridge or award us some number above $37,000 for repair, because we will be building a new bridge there.
Question.
Any other? Yeah.
Yeah, just where is the money gonna come from? Do you have an idea yet?
Come out of Mr. LaFoon's pocket.
Mr. LaFleur, do you have an idea yet where these funds might come from yet?
Sam and I will be addressing that, and if a budget amendment is necessitated, it will be brought to the council.
Okay, thank you. We've got.
Okay, well, that begs the question here. We're approving the contract, or the motion to approve the contract is on the table. The next step would be a budget amendment. I would support the fact, since the contract, if it is approved by council, to go ahead and proceed looking for the budget amendment to be before council at next month and move on from there. So we can get started.
Agreed.
Yeah. We have a motion and a second. Council, please vote.
The vote is unanimous.
Okay, item 2, Ms. White, we took that off of the agenda, did we not? Okay. Item 3 is consideration request by the Jackson Police Department to continue the domestic violence unit and a commitment by the City of Jackson for $60,000 over 3 years to match SANE and START funding requested by the state of Tennessee. And we have Captain Holt here, and I think Miss Margaret came in from from RAP. Captain?
Yes, sir. Gentlemen, actually, I'd like to introduce several people who are here with us today in support of this. Our staff that are currently in the domestic violence unit, Investigator Debbie Stample, who's our full-time person, frankly, without whose dedication and commitment that this program would not be successful. Ms. Kate Aberson is also here. She came to us from the Fort Lauderdale, Florida Police Department, where she retired. Investigator Steve Gregory, who's retired from the Jackson Police Department, and Ms. Diane Brainey, who's not here, is our administrative assistant. Also, Assistant District Attorney Matt Floyd, who works with us in City Court, and of course, Ms. Cole from RAP. To give you a kind of historic background and lay the groundwork for this, the City of Jackson, the Jackson Police Department, entered into a grant agreement with the Tennessee Office of Criminal Justice Programs in 2005 to establish the first sexual assault nurse examiner sexual assault response team program in the state that was funded by the law enforcement segment of STOP funding, or Stop Violence Against Women funding. That year, we trained the first sexual assault nurse examiners in West Tennessee outside of Shelby County. We also trained and co-trained law enforcement and advocacy all over West Tennessee to work together and with the SANES to create a system that was friendlier to sexual assault victims and improve the quality of evidence and outcomes in sexual assault cases. We continued to do that for the 3-year grant period and were renewed for another 3 years in 2008 with an increase to our funding. We train additional nurses each year and expand on the training of the existing SANES. Many of them have gone on to achieve a national certification through the International Association of Forensic Nurses, and we've developed into a nationally recognized program. Our nurses have completed over 300 forensic exams for West Tennessee law enforcement agencies, and hundreds of law enforcement officers, nurses, and advocates have benefited from training and equipment. The SANE SART program has completely changed the way sexual assault victims are handled in West Tennessee. It's created a team of highly trained and skilled forensic nurses that did not previously exist in our area, and train law enforcement and advocacy to greater awareness, greater skills, and to do better work for the best outcomes. Most importantly, I believe we've met a key goal in this, and that is it has become institutionalized in criminal investigation in West Tennessee as a standard operating procedure, and it's expected in prosecution. We have a good base with this now, after 6 years, and a strong partnership with our partners, RAP and West Tennessee Legal Services, the DA's office, and the hospital. I believe we can continue to maintain those goals and outcomes for less money. With that in mind, or to lay the next part of this, in the City of Jackson Police Department entered into a grant agreement with the Office of Criminal Justice Programs in 2009 for an American Recovery and Reinvestment Act grant that was for 22 months. We used that to form our domestic violence unit. This unit has been unique. It's incredibly successful and greatly cost-effective. We used the funding to create the unit using one full-time existing investigator and several part-time and domestic violence investigative case managers, supported by a part-time administrative assistant. The case managers all have the prerequisite law enforcement background and experience. Now each domestic violent complaint and arrest is assigned to an investigative case manager who takes what the first responder has done and build on it with interviews, victim statements, suspect statements, follow-up photographs, and assembling supporting evidence and preparing case files for evidence-based prosecution of domestic assault. They follow the cases through court and testify and ensure that victims are apprised and connected with advocacy and victim support services. We went 10 months without a homicide. Sorry, I meant to put this up. Good. We went 10 months without a homicide this year. We recently had our first. It was not domestic. Domestic homicides historically over the last 10 years have been about 25% of our homicides. Note that the downturn coincides with the formation of the unit and the department's and prosecutors' and courts' commitments to address domestic violence collaboratively. With the domestic violence unit, we're able to pursue domestic cases much more aggressively without reduction of effort in other investigative areas such as violent crimes, property crimes, auto crimes, and financial crimes. The domestic violence unit investigators tell me we're seeing more new offenders as opposed to the repeat offenders that we were seeing when we started. That tells me we're intervening earlier in more domestic violence cases before they escalate. And gentlemen, in my opinion, there's no other single project we've ever done that had more effect on violent crime in such a relatively short period of time. And what we're illustrating here is we've taken a time period before the formation of the domestic violence unit, looking at the outcome of how many of those cases actually went to prosecution compared to afterwards. Where we went online in September of last year, so in a little over a year, we've doubled the amount of cases that are going to prosecution. The outcomes of those prosecutions have also changed. We've seen more felony cases bound over to the grand jury as opposed to being handled informally. More offenders have actually served time for the offenses out of city court. Other dispositions such as anger management, probation, supervised probation, and somewhat is actually down after we're formed, but that's because we're prosecuting more of them in the system. As you can see that we've gone up slightly on the cases that were dismissed, but we're prosecuting twice as many cases. So that's a 2% is not unexpected. And at the time we prepared this last month, 7% of our active cases were still pending. What we're asking here is to combine the SANE SART program and the domestic violence program into a comprehensive violence against women program with our renewal of grant funding in July. The SANE SART program is up for renewal under regular STOP funding. And what I'm proposing, requesting here today is that we use $50,000 that's in our regular funding for the SANE program to continue that program. The match on that is in kind and would continue to be in kind. In other words, that's matched by my time, the nurse's time, and administrative assistant's time, and Ms. Hicks and the accounting department's time. And then we transfer approximately $30,000 from the SANE SART program into the domestic violence component, seek an additional $25,000 from the state, and what I'm requesting from you gentlemen is a commitment of a cash match for that segment of the program of $20,000, which would allow us to fund that program at $75,000, which is the amount we're operating on currently. That's about it. We're looking for a commitment from the council. Now, we do not have the grant at this time. What this gives us an opportunity is go back to Office of Criminal Justice Program and say, we are this serious about this program. If you can help us, we're already committed.
All right, total amount of the grant is $315,000 for 3 years.
That would be the state part, yes,
That
sir.
would be the state part. In addition to that, $60,000.
$60,000 is what we're asking
over
from the
3.
city.
So making it fairly close to about a $400,000.
Yes, sir.
Roughly, okay.
Question, that is over a 3-year period of time?
Yes, sir, it's $20,000 a year.
Okay, that was my question.
Yeah. Margaret, you want to?
Well, I think that you can look at statistics and all of that and see that there's been a difference, but I also know that the victims that we're serving are being brought to the brought to RAP sometimes by the police department. They're immediately referred to RAP if they're not brought there. The police are working hand in hand with our court advocates so that we can help Matt in getting that prosecution that needs to happen. And we know that the biggest deterrent for domestic violence is jail time. And we're seeing more abusers go to jail, and it's because of efforts of the DV unit. So I think that even though Jackson Police Department was further along than other people, other departments in this West Tennessee, now we're way ahead of other departments by having this specialized unit and working so closely, not just having the unit, but working very closely with RAP and with prosecution so that we could actually get, make a dent in this crime, because it's not been happening before. I think the amount of people that actually were prosecuted is just astounding. Before, things would be dismissed, and now they're actually going to the grand jury or getting prosecuted, or they're pleading or whatever. And that's because the Jackson Police Department DV unit said, you're not walking away. Well, we're gonna do something about it. It's not gonna be dropped. And I think that's the message that you want to send to our city, is that it's safer because the police department is taking a stand.
Okay. Thank you, Marty. Questions from council?
I have a question, if I may.
Sure.
Mike, with what you're asking the council to do, would this expand the program as it is now, or would it just only maintain it?
This would allow us to
Continue
maintain
go
it as it
forward?
exists.
Okay. And it is contingent upon the OJCP grant funding, and you may have
Yes, sir.
said, when would you know? When would you get that answer?
We would know in June
In June? Okay.
or July at the latest, but hopefully by then, because we'll have to have our budget in by then.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Make a motion to accept.
Okay, we have a motion to accept. Second. Discussion from council. Go ahead.
This program's continuing through the end of June, this fiscal year, isn't it? And we're trying
Domestic
to,
violence, actually, this domestic violence program ends in April. I've got to try to find some way to bridge it until June.
okay, all right. So we won't get it back cranked up again until next June then possibly.
Well, unless we can find some funding to keep it going for those 2 months.
How much
Okay.
funding would that be?
Let's see. We could probably do that for about 3,000 or so for those 2 months.
Okay. But, okay, it ends the following April, not last April, next April.
Next April. yes,
Okay,
sir.
so we'll have a 2-month gap there possibly that we cannot get funding for, or we'll have to worry with at that point in time.
Yes,
He's
sir.
talking about $3,000 funding gap, though,
Well, no, he's talking about funding for the whole thing, which is, yeah,
the $3,000. Is that correct? 3,000?
no.
I think we're averaging about 3,000 to 4,000 a month is what we're spending. on the
Okay, so
program.
we got 2 months. So you got $8,000,
Yes.
$6,000 to $8,000 that you've got to have a funding gap for. Which,
I guess you'll come back before us before you shut it down then, won't you?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
I'll take it today if you are.
Well,
I think through, maybe
If
through,
somebody just make a motion, we'll take it.
well, I think the money can be found because just in overtime alone,
I think,
That's another issue.
that's another issue though, yeah.
through department transfers, hopefully that can be worked out for 2 months. If not, we'll provide a budget amendment for council to keep, if that's the wish. Okay, we have a motion. And a
We
second.
do.
We have a
We
second.
want it to happen.
Yeah, we do, I think.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. Council, please vote.
And the vote is unanimous.
Thank you very much, gentlemen.
Thank you, Captain. Okay, we handled item 4. Item 5 is consideration of budget amendments.
We have 3 budget amendments that we're going to consider today. The first one that I have is an amendment for City Hall building. This is for the microphones that you see on the table. This was not budgeted last month, so when we did the table and the invoice came in, I realized we needed to budget that funding, $1,445, and this will be pulled from fund balance.
So moved, because I can hear Karen better.
Second.
We have a motion, second question. Council, please vote.
The vote is unanimous.
The second amendment that we have today is to transfer funds budgeted for Jones Creek Golf Course. This was already allocated in our budget. However, it was in the capital fund, and we're moving these funds to the general fund to cover the interim when we are taking care of this. This is $5,832 transferred from general fund to capital, from capital fund to general fund.
Before a vote's taken there, let me kind of explain to council what's happening at Jones Creek. Obviously, we terminated the lease with the previous company that had the lease there for a number of reasons. The golf course is currently open. We have 2 staff people kind of in a maintenance mode out there. Those people are currently under the auspices and being paid by a federal grant. I think it's through Workforce Development or one of those grants. Just to put us in a maintenance mode and an upkeep mode until we are able to get the golf course into the hands of another company, which we're negotiating with right now. And with any luck, we'll have that lease before council at the next meeting. And obviously, the objective is to get it out of our hands into someone else's hands ASAP.
So Mayor, you're not gonna let Tony run it under the Parks and Rec?
Don't you lose all the range balls. Okay, we have,
Is that covered in the 5,000?
what?
The range balls.
Okay, do we have a motion, a second?
No.
Okay, is there a motion to approve it? Motion. Is there a second?
Second.
I have a second.
Question.
Discussion.
Have we asked the previous, for any reimbursement for any expenses, the previous owner, or we just?
Well, I mean, well, I'm not for sure. You know, I don't know where we are on, I think he left, if there's any outstanding debt, it was between his company and other companies. The city was not involved in any of that.
Okay. Question. This 5,800, is that correct?
Correct.
Is that just for this particular month? This
No,
month?
This is the total amount that was left in capital. We
Okay.
budgeted 8,000.
All right.
And we had expended from July 1 till now, and it's down to 5832, and we're moving it from capital into general fund.
And that's basically all the money we'll have to spend the golf course until we get it in the hands, and that's for the routine maintenance rather than letting the golf course just go unmaintained at all. That'll get us through, and hopefully until we get the lease into the hands of another management company.
Thank you.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Council, please vote.
Motion passes 8-1.
The last amendment that we have today is the federal equitable sharing. This is from seized funds in the amount of $140,000, 524.70. I've attached the list of equipment that this unit will be purchasing, but Captain Patrick Willis is here. If you have any questions, he'll be happy to answer those.
Yeah.
Is there
Move the approval.
I have a motion made for approval. Second?
Second.
We have a second. Discussion? Council, please vote.
And the vote is unanimous.
The last amendment you had, we have pulled at this time. Thank you.
Final item on the agenda is consideration of invoices over $10,000.
So moved.
Have a motion and second. Discussion. Council, please vote.
Motion passes 7-2.
There being no further items, meeting is adjourned.
Surprised?